No other fanciness with this intro, let's just talk about this game. I'm not gonna lie, it's surreal to finally be able to talk about this, but I'm glad I finally get to do so. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a complete reimagining of the classic JRPG from Square Enix that was on the original PlayStation. I won't harp on the terms to describe this game, everybody gets caught up on whether to call it a remake, or reimagining, or whatever else. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to interchange between them, so bear with me. It's honestly up to you which one you want to use more. But what is actually important is how the game completely overhauls the look and the gameplay of the original Final Fantasy VII. For anyone who has never played Final Fantasy VII on PlayStation before, here's the Cliff Notes version of the story. The Shinra Electric Power Company is harvesting energy from the planet to make Mako, a power source used for all sorts of things. While this improves the lives of the people who live in the city of MIDGAR, Mako also causes many problems for others. Shinra is effectively draining the life from the planet and forcing people to live in a life of poverty. Opposed to this, a group of terrorists named Avalanche undertake a mission to blow up the Mako reactors around MIDGAR and stop Shinra from damaging the planet. They're joined by an ex-soldier named Cloud, our protagonist with a past that's strongly connected to Shinra and their exploits over the years. While turning his back on the company, Cloud has worked as a mercenary for a living and crosses paths with Avalanche, reuniting him with his childhood friend Tifa and meeting others along the way. But as all of this is going on, fate sets in motion events that will take Cloud and his friends to the edge of destiny and come face to face with a greater challenge from a legendary soldier known as Sephiroth. And that's all I'm going to say about the story, because there's a lot that happens and it's so much better if you get to see it unfold for yourself. But let me tell you, much of the plot from the original Final Fantasy VII is retained and revitalized in so many ways. The heart of this story is just as good as longtime fans remember, but Final Fantasy VII Remake is a real beast with gorgeous visuals and a phenomenal soundtrack. All of us were patient for years hoping this remake would eventually come out, but was the wait really totally worth it? Does Final Fantasy VII Remake live up to the incredible hype of its legacy? Again, it's hard to believe, but Square Enix definitely brings a strong case here.
This pump's sole purpose is to drain the planet dry. While you sleep, while you eat, while you shit, it's here sucking up Mako. It doesn't rest, and it doesn't care. You do realize what Mako is, don't you? Mako is the lifeblood of our world. The planet bleeds green like you and me bleed red. The hell you think's gonna happen when it's all gone, huh? Answer me!
The reality here is that the crazy story of Final Fantasy VII Remake is complemented by fantastic visuals and an awesome soundtrack. Anybody that was a fan of Final Fantasy VII Advent Children way back when will love this game, especially with the overall presentation of it. It just looks phenomenal. Now, even though the game is primarily contained within the first section of the original Final Fantasy VII, which is pretty much everything going on Midgar, there is still a large scope to this game. Like, you're going to be playing this game for at least up to 40 or 50 hours, give or take if you're able to do everything in it. But there is so much stuff that happens, there's so much detail and so much care given to a lot of the different plot sequences, a lot of the bigger events, and the character development. There's a lot going on here with the story, even though it's just the first part in an epic trilogy, or at least what's possibly going to be an epic trilogy for Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, even though we're going to get into a little bit more of the minutiae of the differences of this story a little bit later on, I do have to say I really enjoy a lot of the changes that Square Enix has done with the story for Final Fantasy VII Remake. One of my favorite aspects about this is just how well they humanize Shinra as a company, the people that are working for Shinra, the people that aren't necessarily the big baddies that we've come to know over the years, but all the normal people that live in Midgar that just want to make a living, that just want to be part of something so that way they could get on with their lives. Those are the people that really get a lot of much more complexity compared to what we got in the original game. The game does a really great job presenting you the other side of the argument. It doesn't necessarily make it all like binary or either black or white or good and evil. There's people in Shinra that don't necessarily agree with Shinra, but also don't necessarily agree with what Avalanche is doing. It's pretty crazy and it makes things a whole lot more complex and a lot more in-depth and interesting. Just overall, it just makes the story that much more better, in my opinion anyway. Now, one other thing I do want to compliment the game on is the voice acting. All these different voices we get for Cloud, Barret, Tifa, Aerith, Red 13, and everybody else that we've come to know over the years is totally recast. They didn't use any of the voice actors that we've seen in like Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. They totally redid everything, and I think it works well because there's a lot of changes and a lot of things that are different about Remake that you didn't really get in some of those other compilation of Final Fantasy VII entries, but I think it works well because there's a lot of care, a lot of love, and a lot of real attention attention to detail going into a lot of this stuff, and everything just flows so much better. It just comes off so much better. The funny moments and the crazy moments and the exciting moments and the scary moments, they're that much more even better than what we've ever seen them before. Alright, despite all that, let's get into the gameplay of Final Fantasy VII Remake, because there's a lot to unpack here, and I feel like some people that have been talking about this game have really been harsh on it, or at least not giving enough credit to certain aspects about the gameplay, because again, there's just so much to dive into with this remake. Alright, let's just get this out of the way right now. Final Fantasy VII Remake plays very different from its predecessor, and honestly, this is for the better. Contrary to what some people say, a lot of what you're getting here is definitely based off the mechanics and the controls from Final Fantasy XV, and I really like it. The gameplay itself is a combination of real-time combat and exploration, blended together with elements of the ATB system and turn-based combat from the original Final Fantasy VII. But instead of the two clashing together, both styles of game sync up pretty well. You control Cloud the majority of the time, exploring Midgar at various points of the story and getting into fights with enemies. When in combat, you can attack freely to build up your ATB meter and use it on actions such as magic or character-specific abilities. You can also switch between characters in your party during battle at any time, utilizing their special abilities too. The best part of this is how everyone gets their time to shine with their unique weapons, attacks, and fun banter while in combat. Seriously, the dialogue between everyone as they're fighting is really something special, as are the exciting cinematic moments during the bigger fights. However, battles can require a little getting used to at first glance, but the more time you spend with them, the easier and incredibly addicting they can be. Now I won't lie, there were some moments for me where the combat got a little frustrating and cheap. The camera can often be a nuisance when you're locked onto enemies and you find yourself in a corner or a tight area. Sometimes when faced with larger groups of enemies, you'll get hurt by attacks outside of your view and forced to reorient yourself before being able to evade or guard. This can be a real problem during boss fights towards the middle and later chapters, which might cause you to retry them a few times. However, if you take your time to plan out your actions, you can overcome all of the tougher fights the game throws at you.
I'm ending this. Don't overdo it.
I'll take care of them. Can you take over for me? Let's go. Hang in there. I'm not going out like
Let's
this.
do
I'll
this.
take care of you.
Now I do have to say, I really like the Materia System in Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's very similar to the original Final Fantasy VII, even though there's a couple things here and there that are a little bit more streamlined, but it flows well with everything else in the game. I actually like it. It's easy to understand and easy to mess around with, easy to customize and really tinker to your liking depending on what battles you're going to be getting into. The other thing too I really like is the level upgrade system, which very similar to the Crystarium in Final Fantasy XIII and at least what you got in Final Fantasy XV, although at first glance for me it was a little bit confusing because I thought in order to get some of the stat bonuses and the upgrades, you have to have that specific weapon equipped, but that's actually not the case. You could equip whatever weapon you want, but as long as you level up those weapons with the different AP points you could get all those basic stat upgrades, those abilities, those little perks. That's actually really cool, and it makes things a little bit easier to manage as you're going through the game. One other thing I do want to compliment the game on is the summons. I actually really like how the summons are handled in Remake. They actually look very cool, very cinematic when they first enter the battle, and they're super powerful and super helpful, especially in boss fights and other optional fights that you get into later on. My only little nitpick here is that certain summons that were part of the original FF7 are not included in this game, which I thought was a little bit weird. You know, summons like Odin I felt like are big staples of any Final Fantasy game, but again, we don't get Odin in this game, so I don't know what's up. Maybe we'll get him in a future installment, maybe in the sequel, or maybe even the third entry, depending on how many we get of Remake. But still, I feel like those are going to come, but for the summons that we got in this game, especially some of the bigger surprises, they are actually really cool. The only other thing I do have to mention is something that a lot of people have complained about, which is the air combat when you're getting into different battles. I do have to agree it's a little bit wonky, especially with the camera going crazy all over the place, and the lack of a jump button, which is exactly what you got in Final Fantasy XV, and I felt like it was handled a little bit better. It played more like Kingdom Hearts. But for what we got here for Final Fantasy VII Remake, it could always be updated, it could always be tinkered, but it wasn't broken to the point of like, you know, the entire combat system was messed up. It didn't really bog down the experience for me all that much. Okay, with all that stuff out of the way, which is a huge chunk of the game, let's talk about some of this extra content, this optional content, this side content, the side quests, a lot of this stuff that I've seen people complain about, but I really don't see why people are so annoyed or upset at some of this stuff, because for what we got here, is actually, again, really good. The main plot of Final Fantasy VII Remake is a huge part of the experience, but there's plenty to do in Midgar with side quests scattered around. Unfortunately, you can't get into most of it until around Chapter 3, and even then you'll need to play even further beyond that to open up more of the interesting side quests and optional activities. There's little sub-stories and extra cutscenes that play out as you complete them, so you're getting to see more interactions with characters as you go. Some people might dislike the majority of fetch quests that pad out the time you spend playing, but it didn't bother me too much. My only nitpick is that some activities can't be done once you pass a certain point of the story. I like being able to come back later and finish side quests and other optional tasks, but if you progress further in the story, you'll have to wait until you complete the game to go back and finish them. Once you get to Chapter 8 and Chapter 14, more side quests open up. Some influence events in the story with varying dialogue, but not significantly enough to stray too far from the plot of Final Fantasy VII. You can end up getting different costumes and alternate encounters with a few characters, which is neat to see. However, it's not radically different enough to make me want to replay an entire section. Other important optional areas are the Coliseum near Don Corneo's mansion and the Shinra VR battles at the Shinra building. These are neat for leveling up and gaining extra rewards, but I felt like both could have used more battles available. I was expecting more to open up in the Coliseum once I finished all the challenges that were listed, but you don't get anything beyond the 11 battles that are available. You have to wait until you reach the Shinra Combat Simulator in Chapter 16 to do more challenges. These battles are similar to the ones in the Coliseum, but I feel like you get access to them a little late in the game. But what I really don't like is how some of these challenges can only be accessed after you beat the game and play through again in hard mode. I feel like this was unnecessary because the optional bonus challenges could have just been included within the normal mode. It just doesn't make any sense to lock them out with a harder difficulty setting. I also dislike the stipulations you're given in hard mode, where you can't use items, you only gain HP at benches, and you have to deal with much harder enemies throughout the entire game. Now, I don't mind the tougher enemies, but the other stuff also felt very unnecessary to me. It just feels way too overzealous in trying to make the game harder, and ultimately discourages anyone from seeing the last few pieces of optional content. This could have been handled differently and planned out much better.
They took everything from us. Again.
Okay, I'll give it to you guys that some of the stuff going on with these side quests act like a little bit too much like fetch quests, and they can get a little annoying, like sending you all over the place to do these really innocuous things. But in response to that, I would still say there's still a lot of great side quests and all the stuff going on with the main quest line that's actually still really good. There's still all these great little optional activities you get to do, including all the extra fights in the Coliseum and the Shinra VR battles. There's the gym stuff you could do. There's all the other little side quests that have all these little sub-stories and little things you could get involved with that are not too in-depth, they're not too abundant, but they're still good for what they are. They're short but sweet, and I feel like they're still pretty fun and pretty interesting to explore. Now, the only thing I could really criticize about the optional endgame content for Final Fantasy VII Remake is the stuff that's locked behind the hard mode. I really don't like this. I find it to be completely unnecessary, completely unneeded, and it's just, again, it really pads out the game in my personal opinion. This is almost the equivalent of like taking something like Kingdom Hearts or Kingdom Hearts 2 and locking all the different optional fights like against Sephiroth, the Coliseum, like with the Gold Cup and stuff like that, and putting it behind Proud Mode or Critical Mode and preventing anybody else that plays the standard game from accessing that. To me, I don't like that. I don't think you need to do something like that. It could be included in the main game, even though they could still be tough fights, they could still be optional stuff. But why make a person play through the entire game all over again? It just, again, it doesn't make any sense to me. For some people, they could take on the extra challenge, and that's totally cool with you, totally fine with you. You do you, boo. But for someone like me who spent like 40 plus, 50 plus hours with this game, I feel like I should be able to at least, check out some of that optional content. I don't want to have to play through the entire game all over again. It just, again, it's unneeded, it's unnecessary. Square Enix shouldn't really have did something like that. Okay, let's now talk about the thing that everybody wants to talk about with Final Fantasy VII Remake, and that's the differences from the original story, as well as also some of the big implications that happen at the end of this game. And man, do people have opinions about this. Like, it's just one way or the other. Everybody has an opinion about this, but if I'm going to be straight up with you guys, I feel very different than what I've seen most people say about the ending of this game. Okay, now here's the big thing about Final Fantasy VII Remake that gets everyone twisted. Some people feel the game is bogged down by the changes made to the original story. Some take huge issues with the finale and how significant the implications are going to be for the rest of the series. And if I'm being straight up with you all, the direction they're going with this doesn't bother me. I actually think it's interesting how everything about Final Fantasy VII is going to be mixed up and give us something new off of everything that we already know. The truth is that no matter what Square Enix did, not everyone was going to be satisfied with it. Instead of giving us just a one-to-one remake of the original story, we're getting a retelling that makes sense for a modern day game and the possibility of something different to live up to the legacy of Final Fantasy VII. The idea of changing the fate of some characters and possibly altering big events is a scary thought to people who really love Final Fantasy VII, and I completely understand that. I mean, come on, Sephiroth is showing up now, huh? Aerith might know more than what she leads on to? Really? Zack might be alive? What?
No! No! No!
No! No!
I get all of that, I really do. It's pretty wild. But Square Enix brought on many of the original writers and the dev team who gave us that classic game to begin with. So I'm confident in knowing whatever direction Final Fantasy Remake is going to take us, it has the blessing and the care from the people who started it all. They created the characters in the story we love, and they know them better than anyone else. So I don't feel like the next installments are going to stray really far from the main plot points of Final Fantasy VII, but I am curious to see what kind of ramifications this game will have on other parts of the world and the characters we've yet to see. And it's honestly really exciting because now I get to see all of this through a new lens. It would have been great to just have a straight up remake with everything remaining the same, but from what I've seen from Final Fantasy VII Remake so far is that Square Enix is looking to give us something more beyond that. And as a fan of Final Fantasy with a lot of reverence for the original game, I love seeing the great care being taken to make something very special for all of us.
I'm asking you to help me. I know that together we can do this. But if we do, we'll be changing more than fate itself. If we succeed, if we win, we'll be changing ourselves.
When you really look at how things have turned out with FF7 Remake, in spite of all the things that happened in the past, when we first started hearing about this game being made, what we got here is something fantastic. I even looked up the term remake in the dictionary on Webster Online and stuff, and even though remake implies like redoing something, it also implies redoing something a little bit differently than last time. There's a whole lot of different things you can infer about that. Even if you were someone that just wanted a faithful retelling and a reimagining of the original story of Final Fantasy VII in all its glory and keeping things the exact same. You can't deny all the stuff that's going on with Final Fantasy VII Remake is special. You can't deny that it's just presented very well. It's doing a lot of great stuff that's really respecting and having a lot of reverence for the legacy of the original game. There's just no denying that. Anybody that says differently is lying to both you guys and lying to themselves, because what Square Enix got here and what they're showing us is really awesome. So after everything that I've said up to this point, can I recommend that anybody pick up Final Fantasy VII Remake on PlayStation 4? Hell yes. This game is great, it's fantastic, it looks great, it sounds great, it plays very well. There's a lot of great stuff, a lot of great value you're going to be getting out of playing this game. Even if you're someone that doesn't like Final Fantasy VII or never played the original game, I feel like you're really going to enjoy what this game has to offer you. I will say with a little asterisk that if you really want to appreciate a lot of the great stuff that FF7 Remake is doing, I highly encourage you to at least try out the original Final Fantasy VII. You don't even necessarily need to play the full game through, just play through that first disc of the original FF7, and not only are you going to get the kind of, start and the source of a lot of these references and little big moments that you see in Remake, but you're also going to appreciate a lot of the little fan service scattered throughout the game. I have my little criticisms here and there about the game, but I definitely got to admit, I'm really excited and looking forward to what happens next with Midgar, Cloud and his friends, and what else is going to be going down in the next entry of Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Marlene! I'll come back.
So, what now?
And And there you guys go. Those are my overall thoughts about Final Fantasy VII Remake. Again, it's just so surreal being able to talk about this game as a game and look at it critically. Because it was just like not too long ago, myself and many other people thought this game was never coming out. Like there was just so many things that we were worried about. And I'm so glad that we were proven wrong. And the result that we got here is just something awesome. It's something amazing. With all of that being said, those are just my opinions about FF7 Remake. Let me know what you guys think about this game down below in the comments section. Tell me, did you guys play Final Fantasy VII Remake? Did you finish it? Like some of your overall thoughts? Or what other Final Fantasy games you guys want to see get the remake treatment? Myself and many other people would said that they would love to see FF8 get this treatment, Final Fantasy IX get the same thing, maybe Final Fantasy IV, that would actually be kind of cool. I mean, again, the possibilities are endless, but I'm curious to see what you guys bring up. Let me know all that stuff down below in the comments section. Thanks so much for checking out this video, everybody. I really appreciate your time and your support. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel when you can. Don't forget to leave me a like on this video and comment down below. And also, don't forget to check out my Patreon page. I got a lot of great content that I know you're gonna love. There's links down below in the description box. I hope you guys have a chill day. Peace out and stay epic, everybody.